The other day I was challenged by 3 other game developers to see who can make the best game with the same asset pack in only 48 hours. And this is my first collab video, so I didn't want to play it safe. I wanted to push my limits to make something far more complicated than I ever have before. As for the assets in question, this is what we are all working with. It's called Micro Roguelike by Kenny. And I didn't really have any big ideas for the game, so I thought I might as well make a roguelike. So I built a whole tile-based system to hold characters in tile map and slapped in this guy. This is you, the player. And the way the game will work is, you will have 4 moves similar to Pokemon that you will use to get around and fight enemies. This asset pack does not have anything for UI, but fortunately for this challenge, you are completely allowed to make assets for yourself for the UI. And so I went trying to make the buttons look as good as possible, and added this symbol to indicate the energy cost. So this is already looking like Pokemon but Slay the Spire, but also a top-down tile-based game. And sure, this may seem like I'm overscoping, and I probably am, but there is some good news. Another rule for this challenge is that the 48 hours given for this project can be non-consecutive, and that is already very different to a game jam. Now this 48 hours isn't a deadline. The real deadline was about 2 weeks, but we can only spend 48 hours total on the project within that time. And I was already feeling quite confident with this higher scope. Hopefully I don't overscope any further. But now it's time to get those moves working properly. When you select a move, a bunch of buttons appear on the spaces. Now you can guess what will happen, and just for now, I made a move called Quick Step that will move you into the place that you clicked on. And the whole system I made for moves allows me to just do nearly whatever I want. I can choose the specific spots where you can use a move, the energy costs. Other behaviors though, like attacking, I will have to code myself, and even more unique ones that I'll get to later. But for now, let's try killing this one zombie. So I tried to add all the logic for attacks, and when you select them, you should only be able to click on the actual enemies and not empty tiles or whatever else. When you do click on the enemy, they will take damage, indicated by the screen shake, which just makes things a lot less boring than it already is. And I also added indicators for how much energy and health you have. Anyways, the zombie is currently just standing there, and we need them to do something. And so I made this object which, if I place into any sort of tile object, they will be able to use moves and fight back as well. Not yet. But for now, you'll notice these red markers on the map which will indicate where and what the enemy intends to do. And there's also like tooltips for everything, so you know exactly what's happening. For a game like this, and since it's single player, it's a pretty good idea to let the player know what the enemy's intent is. Similar to Slay the Spire, so that there is some actual strategy rather than just guessing. But before I yap more on game design, let me tell you what I did. First things first, I made them move around and also make them do damage. But now I need to make them take in specific moves and randomly pick one every turn. So now to make an enemy, all you need to do is add this enemy attack node, then just drag in all the moves you want it to have, and adjust whatever other settings you need to. Very easy to set up a new enemy if I needed to. But I mean, it was real trial and error to get them to read the moves in the first place, and also to just show the intents on the board. But I won't ramble over that too much, it's just boring old bug fixing. But finally, it looks like this. There's a couple things going on in here. Firstly, there's 2 different kinds of symbols for the intents. The square looking one is for attacks only, and the circle is for skills. Skills are just moves that don't deal damage, or at least not directly, just to be clear. And you'll also notice that the enemies move after attempting to attack. Basically, some moves will allow them to do quick step right after, and some of them won't. But I found that allowing them to do this just made the fights a lot more interesting. And since I had this whole system working, I decided to make a bunch of enemies, which I'll talk more about later. Okay, so now that we can fight, if you kill everyone, that's it, the game is over. But that's not what I want. The idea should be similar to Slay the Spire. You kill all the enemies in an encounter, grab your rewards, and move on to the next fight, until you finally reach the boss. So now I just needed to make a map. I was trying some designs for it with multiple parts and finally decided on this. I know it's nothing fancy and stays more consistent with the rest of the UI. And yes, you'll have choices moving up the map, but then I also realized that there isn't any real choice in this map. You will be picking between fights and the fights are random. You don't really know what to expect no matter what you pick. So ultimately there was no real choice and I just went for a single line of nodes instead. Well, that's just the scope creep coming up to me. There's absolutely no way I could make enough content to make a map more random with only 48 hours when I even haven't finished every single feature. But moving on to another important thing, rewards at the end of combat. We need that to add a little deck build aspect to the game. So basically when you're in a combat, you'll be able to choose between 3 different moves. And since you can only hold up to 4 at a time, when you get more, you can just replace the old ones you don't need. And now putting all those features together, you can pick a node on the map, enter a fight. Once you kill everything, you'll be asked to add a new move or not, and then you'll be brought back to the map. But you probably noticed something on the map, the chests. Basically, I wanted to do a whole relic system as well, where you would just find random items in the chests, which gives you passive benefits to shape your build. And this was probably where the scope creep was at its peak, because I was really running out of time. Well, I still wanted to do something, so I decided on this. The items won't be random, they will be predetermined, and I'll just go for some super simple effects for these items. I decided on a sword and a shield, both super simple. The sword will give you a damage boost, and then the shield will just increase your health. And I mean, it was certainly manageable, but there were a couple little issues that came from this. One thing is the sword increasing damage. The game itself worked perfectly fine and all the entities had a strength stat which was added on top of your damage. Like, it works, but the tooltips don't show the increase in damage because the text is just completely static. But after changing up all the tooltips and making it account for the entity's strength, all the damage values are shown correctly. The shield, on the other hand, just add an extra heart and problem solved. I also quickly added some sound effects for everything, and it just made the game a billion times more satisfying. You probably did notice a lot of random new monsters and maps around, and honestly, there's nothing much to talk about them. They just have all sorts of movesets and behaviors. Okay, but maybe there's one interesting character, the Pyro Squid, which is what I decided to call it. This red squid thing. I don't know. I thought it would have fire powers, and I wanted the fire to be like a whole separate tile object that just burns things near it, that the Pyro Squid can use to attack us. So basically, it would need to be able to perform an attack like the regular enemies, and also should be able to be put out if you attack it. So I just used the same enemy attack node that I used for the rest of the enemies, except it doesn't move. But there were some little issues with using that. Now the fire counts as an enemy, so you would have to put the fires out too to actually beat the encounter. I mean, it was a simple fix, just added an option if you want to make the tile object count as an enemy or not. On top of that, I added a couple extra moves for you, the player, to use to place fire tiles since they can also hurt other enemies. And it also turned out to be pretty overpowered, but I don't think I'd have the time to think about balance. So anyway, we need one big bad boss for the end of the game. And the asset pack doesn't really have any big bad boss in it. So I decided to go with this guy with the hood to be the final boss. Well, what's so special about him? Well, first off, he's the only other human that seems to be around here. And does he have any unique attacks? No, quite the opposite actually. I gave him some special behavior so that when you start the fight, he will gain all the moves that you have on top of some basic ones. And he just has a ton of health and extra strength, so he can be deadly if you don't have a good strategy. But to be honest, he's not that difficult. The whole game isn't really difficult. All you need to do is just make sure that you're not in a place where the enemy is trying to attack while chipping in some damage, and you'll win like 100% of the time. But I'm super far in. Rethinking the balance could cost a lot of time, and time was running out anyway, so I came up with a little idea. Rather than making the game difficult, maybe I could just add an extra goal. That is to get the highest score. And yes, I added a whole scoring system. The system is hidden, but you get to see your score when you either win or die. And the game also saves your highest score. But the real kicker here is that to score as much as possible, you need to kill all the enemies in as few turns as possible. So this could just encourage optimization. You also heal up all of your health after every fight, so you can definitely make use of it by taking hits on purpose, since it doesn't carry over anyway. Also, I went ahead and did some music. I wanted to give adaptive music a shot again, since I haven't done it in a while. Last time I did it was for War Before Harvest. But anyway, this is what I came up with. So that's the gameplay done. I decided to work on a main menu and come up with a name. I wanted something with castle in it, or at least a similar word. And I finally settled on the name Palace Plummeting. The plummeting part comes from the fact that you now go down the map instead of going up. Yeah, I changed that just for the name. Anyway, that's just how I made Palace Plummeting. And remember, this was made for a little collaboration video, so if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel and check out the whole collab video to see what the others came up with. And trust me, their games will surprise you.